So I'm a passionate advocate for local food. I've been cooking in Toronto for over 20 plus years, but throughout my journey as a chef, I've never really seen many of me within the cooking industry. When I started cooking in the early 90s, there were like a lot of Sri Lankans, there were a lot of other Asian community, there were Bengali community, but not a lot of Black folks, primarily because our parents, when we migrated right here, don't want us to go back and do other farming work or get into the food industry. The expectation of us is to become leaders and either to become a doctor, a teacher, a lawyer, an accountant, and so forth, but absolutely nothing. But also the other thing about many times we don't get into the kitchen for Somali men specifically is because, in a patriarchal culture, a kitchen belongs to a woman. So you don't want to go into the kitchen because otherwise your own identity as a man and your masculinity gets taken away. So there is a lot of a complexity behind who's in the kitchen in which time of the day as well. So for me, to be gone in the kitchen and to be able to use my own, spending a lot of the time self-reflecting about my identity as a man, as a person, as a chef, and as a father, as a husband, and so forth. So my whole identity, I'm able to use the food as a metaphor or analogy to showcase. So the cornbread, again, I'm bringing the element of a locality. So a lot of a conversation when you're thinking about local and local food, there is a whole advancement of a white chef that's going around with fiddle heads and asparagus and celebrating, we are local, we are local. Meantime, people like us, we look at ourselves, it's like, I'm local too. The only question is like, how come I don't see food that is culturally appropriate to me? So tying up the conversation around food sovereignty, the question is like, what is the right for people to be able to grow, distribute, and also consume food that is culturally appropriate to us? And the element of a culturally appropriate food, it hasn't been much of a conversation within a Eurocentric space. So my goal, my responsibility is to kind of center the voices of those communities that are constantly alienated. Now, I always love to cook with spices and seasonings. So inside my orange sauce there, I also have a star anise, I have a little bit of a cardamom, I have a couple of different spices. And all of those spices that have been influenced by my own heritage, but primarily from the Indian culture. Somali and India have been trading for thousands of years. So the way we eat, the way we consume our food is very much similar to the Indian food. We consume a lot of rice, but because of also the Italian colonization, we eat pasta, we eat rice, we eat also like a goat meat, we eat camel meat. So that's the number one. The reason I made specifically this dish right here, I think a lot about seasonality. So for me, it was like myself as a Somali person, my journey, and being able to come up with a dish that actually kind of looks and feels like me. So I'm using local ingredients. So that was my main focus, because when I'm eating local ingredients, at optimum season, they taste great. So that was my first place as a cook, like getting closer to the source, you can be there. It doesn't matter what you do to it, but if you have like a good, clean food and it's closer to the source, your food already tastes better. That was the number one reason. Then the other thing is because, the Swiss chard or collard greens or kale, those are vegetables that you can find them commonly here in Ontario as well. I love Swiss chard because I love the vibrancy of color as well. And as a Somali person thinking about how vibrant my culture and my community is, I'm reflecting on that as well. And the reason that I'm using duck not only for the locality place, but because it's my own understanding that my food is just as dope as French food. There is a lot of a conversation around racism within the food industry. So why am I constantly celebrating something that is not part of my own heritage? When my own culture, my own community, they have a beautiful food that is worth it to celebrate it. So the nomadic comfort food is what I'm offering this evening. It's like my own journey from Somalia to the Mediterranean, to Italy, to part of the States, to here in Toronto. So that's nomadic comfort food. That's the term that I'm using.